Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Tonight we are going to have our next special session on CMIP, and I'll ask the clerk to formally announce the meeting and call the roll.
A special session is being held on May 18, 2017, 5 o'clock p.m. in the 5th floor conference room for a presentation on the 2017 through 2022 Capital Maintenance Improvement Plan budget. Roll call. Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia, Johnson, Kane, Markley, Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Bynum. Walker.
Here.
Holland.
Here. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. This is our second CMIP in anticipation of the budget. The goal is to get through tonight, walking through more of our capital maintenance improvement program, and then turn it over to the staff to formally prepare the budget. So, Mr. Bach, would you like to take it from there?
I sure would. Thank you, Mayor, Commission. It's good to be able to come in and do the second phase of this. As we presented 2 weeks ago, the really overall emphasis on where we were with the projects, and then provided you all with a copy of the detail of what was all within all the project budgets. Tonight, if you'll advance to the next slide, I'm really going to do a overview of I'm going to have staff's going to kind of do the equipment strategy. We're not giving you copies of all the equipment that we're buying, and I think in the last years we haven't spent the time looking at each piece of apparatus that we're looking at buying, but really the strategy of what we're trying to do. And it's still pretty fluid for us as we're working through right now to try to build it in from a balance perspective, because the equipment is different from projects where we have cash and debt. I know where we're at on the debt limitations. On the equipment side with cash, still working through that till we realize where we are with everything from the operating side and how that focuses in. So we're going to go over the strategy of what we have of the different kinds, main areas, how much we're trying to do and target and buy in each of those areas, and make sure you agree with that. So that's our areas of focus. Also, the emphasis that I'm doing toward the equipment is moving toward cash versus lease. And you know, we have different programs where we have a lot of things where we've gone to 3, 5, and 10-year leases. I'm trying to move out of that category of lease and get more to cash. The emphasis, my first step, is on the 3-year leases. So if I can get the 3 years, and then we'll move to the 5 and the 10. Right now, I'm really not touching any of the 10s. Those are from $600 to $1 million type. You know, a lot of times they're in fire, but they're larger pieces of apparatus, and it's just not practical to be able to make that transition all at once. So those are some of the overall things that that's a strategy we're using in building the budget, and we'll talk about that. And then at the end of this, we'll move back to projects. I have a few projects that I really want to get some clarification on. And then if the commissioners have any questions on any of the other projects that we haven't addressed specifically. So that's the format for tonight, if that works for all of you.
Are we going to be allowed to inject equipment issues that, as a commissioner, I might feel are important?
Yes,
Absolutely.
if you'd like to. I mean, that, and if we don't cover that tonight, or what we think we're covering, and we need to do something of more emphasis in an area, you can lay that out. And then, of course, once we present the budget, if you see there's something there that's glaring miss, then you can put that in. Okay, so major equipment items that we're going to talk about are the fleet vehicles. So we're going to cover public safety, transit, public work, what the strategy is in those areas, streets equipment, water pollution, areas of purchase there, and then telecommunication, which is becoming a larger and larger portion of our budget each year, you know, all the way from what we're doing with the camera equipment for the police department to our fiber network, and really that's become a major portion of our infrastructure. So that piece really goes between equipment and project side of the budget. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Debbie Joncher, our Deputy Finance Director, and she's going to take us through a few of the departments, and then we'll move down to Public Works. Debbie?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. We thought we would just start going through some of the larger departments and just give you an idea of where we are with the fleet and what our replacement schedule's been. Ever since the recession, you know, in previous years, the equipment budget has been cut significantly, so we're behind on our replacement schedule. So we're just going to go through the items and give you an idea of where we are on trying to catch up on that replacement schedule. So we're going to start with the police department. We've got a total fleet of 320 vehicles. The frontline apparatus is 113 vehicles, and those are the marked patrol vehicles. Over the last 5 years, we've purchased 92 of the frontline apparatus in the replacement and 17 of the other vehicles, and that would include other support vehicles such as paddy wagons, if there's animal control vehicles, other vehicles that are not considered the patrol vehicles. Our replacement target is currently at 30 cars per year for the frontline apparatus. In the past couple years, we've been doing about 20. We've been doing a replacement of about 20 cars per year. In 2017, we did increase that to 30, and we're trying to work through, that's our plan, to try to get 30 vehicles per year for that replacement. And then we're also looking at the other vehicles of possibly 5 per year. The next department we're going to look at is fire department. We split fire department into 2 slides. The first one is going to be on suppression, and the second one will be on the EMS. Total vehicles that we have here are 48, and this is only the fire apparatus, which would be pumpers, aerials, quints, and we've got frontline apparatus listed at 23. The difference there is that the staff is cross-staffed to cover all the vehicles in this fleet. All 48 vehicles are available on any given day, but they're staffed to cover the 23. So we're calling that our frontline apparatus. The vehicles purchased over the last 5 years, we've purchased 10 of the frontline apparatus, and that includes 4 in year 2017. And we've also included other support vehicles, about 9 of those over the past 5 years. Our replacement target has been about 2 to 3 units per year on the front line and 3 to 5 units per year on the other vehicles. The next one is EMS. We have a total fleet of ambulances of 16. 9 of those are frontline apparatus. Over the past 5 years, we have replaced all 16 vehicles, all 16 ambulances in the fleet, and our current replacement target is 2 per year starting in 2017. The ambulances are paid from the EMS fund, which is funded by the quarter-cent sales tax. The next department we're going to look at is Sheriff's Department. Their total fleet is 66 vehicles. 25 of those are frontline apparatus. They're marked vehicles. Over the past 5 years, we've replaced 19 of their fleet, and our replacement target is 4 to 6 per year to get us back on their replacement schedule.
You have a question? Commissioner?
So when you say the replacement schedule, this is doing it on a cash basis, Doug?
Not in all cases, no.
Well, that's why I was asking.
No, they
It's kind of
vary, like this one, Sheriff, these are probably cash, I would guess, how we're building it now, but on the previous one on Fire Department,
On the bigger
those are
ones, yeah.
lease.
Okay.
And police was a combination. Last year, we bought,
We bought 20 as a lease finance and 10 we paid with cash, or that's this year in
so
2017.
it's a transitional mode to try to get to more cash away from lease and still trying to come up with targets that get us back where our frontline apparatus is all in good condition.
And so the pairing up the police is helping us on the numbers of police cars we need totally right
It
now?
will help us get there in the future, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The next department is transit. Currently, they have 21 buses in their fleet. However, they've identified for their operational need, they need 24 buses, so they are 3 buses short in their fleet. So the frontline apparatus is 21. Over the past 5 years, we've replaced 13 of those vehicles. 4 have been with a transit grant, and 9 of them have been through the CMIP process. The replacement target is, they currently have 16 vehicles that are in need of being replaced. They've reached their useful life. The useful life of a bus is about 4 years. So over the next couple of years, we're in need of replacing those 16. 10, they're hopeful to get paid for with a transit grant, and the other 6 would come through the CMIP process.
This is probably one department area that is more dire need than the others. One thing we've had in previous years is we had been very successful in getting a lot of federal grants. That was just the earmarks, the federal earmarks that come in. We were pretty good. Every 3-4 years, we were able to keep our buses refreshed and keep going. So it did not have its place in our normal CMIP equipment schedule. We do a little bit of work with this, replace some of them. As you can see, we still were able to get a couple of buses in the last couple of years. But with the recession, everything kept falling behind. And as Debbie noted, we are completely in a point of needing to almost change out our whole fleet. Those 16 noted below, all of them need to be changed now. And the aspect of 24 versus 21 means we bring one bus in, it's run its cycle, we're having to change some things, overlap for one bus for a couple hours, and pull a different bus in and run the rest of the shift for that. Though we had about 4 out the other day because they were down for maintenance, and that's kind of a day-to-day. So these are all, as you know, another group of very expensive piece of equipment that we're working on. We feel pretty good about some of these grants that we have in the hopper, though they're probably we can probably get 4 of them maybe next year out of this. The other 6 are probably a couple of years before they get brought into the cycle of getting pulled into it. So putting our funding into this over the next couple of years, where on all the rest of these, I will say, they were next year, they were the 2018 target you've been looking at. It's probably impractical for me to put in here that we're going to fund 6 up in 2018. Though I left it there in this target because we need to change 6 buses out with UG funding next year in order to keep that keep the operation going good, and we're going to have to make at least a strong hit of that.
Commissioner Walker and then Philbrook.
How much money, UG money, do we spend in the transit department budget?
$7.1 million.
And how much, in addition to that, is federal money?
So we spend $7.1 million, and we have like pass-through grants that go directly to the KCATA. So the number that I'm giving you doesn't include those grants.
Okay, so it's 7.1 million of UG taxpayer money goes for
Yes.
public transit. All right, thank you.
And what does a bus cost?
Yeah, thank you.
A full-size bus?
It's about 90,000.
What?
90,000.
And the little buses?
That is.
Those are our buses.
Oh, just all the little ones.
The full-size KCATA we don't pay for.
Right, the big ATA buses, we just pay them a fee from that $7.1 million to
Like the
operate.
106 and
They
Yeah.
buy the buses.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll also note, we are borrowing some buses from them now to keep our operation going. And that's how we get by with less than what our operational need is.
Okay.
The last department I'm going to talk about is the technology department. We've had many requests this year from the technology. We've got a lot of initiatives. I've just listed a couple of them here. The GIS initiatives, we're looking at a partnership with Esri, which would allow an enterprise-wide licensing as well as technical support. Fiber connectivity, which would be related to the build-out of network for the body cameras, and then other telecommunications. We're looking at an asset management system, as well as utilizing cloud-based storage and services. And I think Public Works is probably going to touch on that when they go into their review of their equipment.
Does that include additional camera and setup so we can simultaneously video standing committee and the Monday planning meetings?
I think that's built into the operating.
That's not in
budget,
here.
actually, is what, oh, I'm sorry. I believe that's proposed as part of administrator's budget for public relations for our operating budget, isn't it? I don't think it's in a separate in this.
Yeah, so everything related to, like this room, it is in public relations budget.
Okay.
Video.
Thank you.
So it's not, yeah.
It's not in
It didn't quite
CMIP.
make the CMIP, it's.
It's just operational.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Walker?
One of the things that I've been reminded of and knew of, but I guess I didn't realize, and I think it would belong in technology, is I haven't seen a proposal for the district attorney's office to become digital in their file retention and their current file system. I think it's a major problem, Doug, and I would invite you and the mayor and anybody who has not been to the fourth floor or the fifth floor of the old courthouse to go up there and examine how files are maintained. It is a multi-year project. How that's best done is probably best left to you and the district attorney. But the fact that thus far I've not seen anything in the budget that would reflect even an awareness that this is an issue. He has himself a book of photos that I think every commissioner who is either going or has been invited to meet with him should ask to look at, of how the files on criminal cases are maintained. And some might say, well, what's the big deal? Well, a lot of those cases are unsolved. If they're ever solved or a new development occurs, the preservation of that material, the various pieces of evidence is critically important. Also, felons are known for filing many kinds of legal actions out of prison. If you don't have a file, you can't defend the, whatever it might be, habeas corpus, post-conviction relief type of practice. And I think that technology has to be involved in that.
I agree with you. The modernization of those records is an issue. I'm going to ask Assistant County Administrator Joe Connor, who's worked on some of this technology, to speak to what we've done and engagement so far.
Yeah, sure. So the DA specifically has reached out to Alan Howes and the Knowledge Office on a number of different fronts, with records being part of that. And they're kind of in a planning process now, trying to really define what they're trying to achieve and how they're going to get there. And so trying to avoid going out and buying some system that looks really good but doesn't really meet their needs. So they've already had some success with some small little projects they've worked with the DA. But there's an open line of communication. We've got staff that are assigned to help them out with with this planning for these kinds of projects.
Well, that sounds like it's years away from being meaningful. Would I be correct or incorrect?
Well, I don't know specifically about that particular project, but it probably wouldn't happen in 2017, no.
Yeah, there's a lot to all of that. I will say this, though, part of where all those records are on the 4th and 5th floor, we're looking at greater plans from a facilities aspect of what we can do with the building. And in order to get into that floor, we're going to have to automate those files in some way, so we just don't have boxes and boxes that are 70 and 80 years old of records. And that involves not only the district attorney, but also some things we might be able to do with district court.
Well, I'm certain that there are files that are of a vintage that their destruction would not be, except for the loss of history perhaps, which to me is important, but to most people may not be a priority, would not have to be digitized. But, there are a huge number of cases over the last 20 years which could still be relevant. I just think we have to view the district attorney's office differently than we do. I mean, we kind of acknowledge it, but we're always talking about more police, more sheriff's deputies, the cop on every corner. You can't get all of them through the funnel that they arrest if we don't have a professionalized district attorney's office. And that goes into a whole different issue for another day, but I'm coming on that one. Okay.
Well, and I'm pleased that our district attorney has reached out to us and said, this is a problem and we want to address it. I think that's the first, in my 4 years, that's the first I've heard of the district attorney reaching out to us and asking for that kind of help. And I think it's a help that we can provide and should, because they're UG records. So I think that's good. And probably a lot of the work that needs to be done is deciding what are the priority records to preserve and just sorting them and getting those saved.
And also identifying who your partners are and can they accept the records in the format you're giving them to. So if you look at all the partners the DA has to work with, there's a whole system there. So
Yep.
it's a much larger process just scanning some documents and making them digital.
That's good. All right.
Also, the district attorney, he has, it didn't come through this process, he has submitted for digitizing. So he did submit like $30,000 and money, $5,000 thereafter for maintenance. It hasn't been approved yet, but it's in the process.
Maybe I need to urge him to be more vocal publicly to get the attention.
Well, he just means it hadn't been approved because it's proposed coming into what we're doing. Yeah.
Oh. Thank you.
Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just what's coming up.
So
Okay, one of the things I wanted to do and kind of closing out, particularly where we talked about some of the emphasis on public safety, is a lot of what we've been able to purchase is through our public safety and infrastructure sales tax. It is really a lot of emphasis toward how we buy police cars, fire trucks. $1.4 million has been expended in those areas, so it's really important to us in order to maintain that kind of equipment and then stay on the path we're looking for, is that we continue to have this dedicated sales tax, which is due to expire in 2020. So it's important for us to keep our eye on the ball of how that's set up and what an impact it would have on our public safety and then our neighborhood infrastructure if we did not have that additional money. Okay, next section we want to go to is toward Public Works.
How much is that tax? Do you remember?
Well, the total tax,
No,
how much
for
revenue?
that, yeah,
3/8
for-
cent.
This is 3/8.
It's a
3/8 of a
3/8 cent sales tax.
okay, thank you.
Certainly. Next area we want to talk about is in Public Works. We've looked at various strategies that are coming on, and I will say with the bringing Jeff Fisher on board last year He has gone through and done a lot of analysis of our department, so I'm going to turn it over to him now, and he's going to talk a little bit about things we're doing in that regard and his staff as they go through their presentation. Jeff?
Thank you. It's been about 8 months now since I joined the team, and it's been a great experience. Most of my focus in that 8 months has been evaluating personnel, systems, and resources, of course. I want to note real quick how useful and important it's been for me to have commission goals, to have citizen survey information, the SOAR initiative. That's provided us great focus, and we're working on our strategic plan right now. That should wrap up here fairly soon. In my assessment, there's several areas of improvement, but a few that I want to note tonight that are related to this discussion. Asset management. One important part of asset management is Lucidity. That's a tool that we have had and continue to utilize. We are expanding it into every division. We just expanded into Parks and Rec to help with the mowing strategy. So it's a really important tool we'll continue to utilize. It helps us be more organized, track our work, identify needs, make business case, those kinds of things. Project management, lower left-hand corner, it's a screenshot of a dashboard view from a project management tool. We do not have that tool. That is something we are exploring now and look to purchase in the next 3 months. That will also help us be more organized from project management. We've got a big portfolio of projects. This will help us deliver more high-performing projects. It will increase accountability and allow us to communicate information to others, including the commission, more easily.
Is that something the public could use also? Would that dashboard have public application?
Possibly. We want to get really good with it before we try something like that, but it's possible, I guess.
There will be a potential integration with our dashboard and the 311 dashboard that's being developed that will be public-facing as far as they can track their work orders that they've called in, be a reference number and things like that.
Okay.
So the other, one other is pavement conditions. The vehicle in the lower right-hand corner is a vehicle that third parties use to drive city streets and collect pavement condition data. We need this. Take about 6 months to collect and create our new baseline that will then allow us to target segments with the right applications 3 to 5 years out. Stretch those dollars, be real effective with those dollars. If we were to build this baseline in-house, in my experience, in a city this size, it'd take about 1.5 years. This will take us about 6 months, so this would be really important. The pavement conditions are just crucial to being more effective with street maintenance. The other, there's a missing piece of equipment in our street maintenance fleet that Brandon's going to highlight for us, but in my experience, again, it's necessary, and I believe we're about to order one here soon, and then we've proposed another one in 2018, and I'll let Brandon take over and highlight that equipment.
Evening, Commissioners. As Jeff pointed out, as part of our evaluation of our pavement condition, we've looked at several different materials and several different implements that we might be needing. But all that really stems from one key piece of data, and that's the citizen survey that came out. Everybody's probably seen this a million times by now, but of course, the number one thing that's pointed out is the quality of and maintenance of our city streets. 53% of our population rated that as their first, second, or third choice as what they would like to see emphasized over the next few years. We've really taken that to heart to come up with better ways to meet those needs. Some of the things we've looked at are, like I mentioned, materials and equipment, and we'll highlight a couple of those here in a second. This is another representation of that same thing, but we pulled out two key pieces, maintenance of city streets and also maintenance of neighborhood streets. 60% said that they were unhappy, dissatisfied, or neutral with the city streets, and 70% were unhappy or dissatisfied or neutral of their neighborhoods. So again, those were huge issues to us, and we felt we could make a large impact with those. The first piece of equipment we want to highlight is a pothole patcher. This is the one Jeff alluded to earlier. As most everybody knows, the way we're currently patching potholes is hot mix in the bed of a truck with crews out and putting it in, tamping it down, and that's what we've got. There's notorious issues with wasting because as the mix dries out, it's just not usable anymore. These new elements have heated batch plants in them, so they keep the material more usable. There's almost 0% waste anymore. You can actually keep material overnight, and because they are heated, we can continue patching through the winter. Because these implements are so advanced, it'll also allow us to reduce our crew size from around 4 to 6, depending on the size of the job, to 1 to 2. This savings, or not really savings, but this reallocation of crew and materials will allow us to focus about $160,000 per crew that we're reallocating to curbs, sidewalks, and other elements. Some of the main features that you'll see that I mentioned earlier were the heated batch plants. So all these hoppers are heated. The first one we're trying to purchase or recommending purchase is this one over here, the lower left hand. That's really a 2-man rig, and what it does is it blows out the patch itself, puts down a little tacky solution, rolls it back in, tamps it, and seals it. It's for larger area patches. The second one over here on the lower right is a 1-man operation. It does the same functions just with this little spray arm out in front. And it's more of an emulsion mix as opposed to the true asphalt mix that we're used to seeing. Both of these are designed to be used on a citywide basis, so they won't be split up per district anymore. It'll be an as-needed basis. We'll be able to train crews on how to use these in the most effective way possible and hopefully get the best product out of them.
Hooray.
I failed to mention in my,
You volunteering, Commissioner?
Well, you know, I might, it might make some of my folks happy if I.
I did some benchmarking a few months ago, and the UG has about 2,400 lane miles in the system. The next, barring KC-Mo, the next is Overland Park in this area at 1,800. And Olathe is even less than that. So it gives you a scale of the system that we have to maintain, and this kind of equipment is just necessary.
Commissioner Johnson.
Is there well, you said you were already working on a strategic plan for the departments.
Right.
One of the things that I'm always curious about and have a lot of discussion with constituents about is sidewalks. And I know that particularly those commissioners east of 635 probably share the same challenge in that regard. I look at the major thoroughfares for my particular district. If you go north-south, I'm looking at maybe 18th, 13th, 10th. I think 7th is pretty good, 5th is pretty good, that go through my district. But it seems to me that those major thoroughfares and then the ones that run also east to west would be the areas that we really need to look at where we put in infrastructure such as sidewalks and curbs and things of that nature. I was just driving down 13th the other day, and it's just atrocious, and it just speaks to the quality of life. So as you're putting those together, I'd just be interested to hear so that I can communicate that, maybe even offer some input, and maybe some of my fellow colleagues might want to jump in on that as well, as to those areas that would be the most beneficial to have that kind of infrastructure as we're talking about trying to revitalize this area of town. So I think I'll stop right there. I could go on, but I think that is something that's of high importance to me.
Commissioner McKiernan, do you want to say something to that?
Yeah, I just, if we look at in the CMIP budget, it looks like a program that came to Neighborhood and Community Development 2 meetings ago. It was the sidewalk fund, a little bit additional money budgeted on an annual basis for filling sidewalk gaps or where there were particular problem areas in sidewalks. So that'll help, and I have a question about that when we get time for questions and answers. But one of the things that it strikes me is, yeah, imagine that, is that I think we need to examine our fundamental approach to sidewalks. Historically, my understanding is a developer or builder puts that in, and after that, the responsibility for the maintenance or replacement of that sidewalk goes to the adjoining property owner. And unfortunately, in our city, like in a whole bunch of cities that are older, and in the more urban or the older areas of town, those adjoining property owners have less means or limited means to contribute to the maintenance of the city sidewalks. And so I think that's something strategically we should think about. What is our approach going forward? To continue with the homeowner, the property owner having the responsibility, but we may throw in 50 or 75% of the cost, or to just have a strategic sidewalk program that is entirely based within the UG.
Well, and we do have a sidewalk master plan, and maybe we need to have that presented.
5 years old.
Well, there's an additional layer being done right now to take it down to a more granular level, to look again at the sidewalk master plan, because it highlights, and we probably need to spend some time just on that sidewalk master plan, because it addresses two things that both of you, I think, are speaking to. One, I do agree that putting the burden on the homeowners when it's a public benefit to have the sidewalk, it's not just that homeowner's benefit. Is that a shared cost that the whole community pays? I think the answer is yes. For instance, when we went down State Avenue and put sidewalks down State Avenue, that was a public interest. It was part of that project. Leavenworth Road, we're putting sidewalks all the way down Leavenworth Road. And in neither of those cases are we asking the public to pay for those.
And can I just add to that? Part of the issue is that a lot of times the homeowner moves in and the sidewalk has already been in 3 decades of disrepair. And so this new guy moves in, and that's when we jump on him and say, this is your responsibility. You should clean up this sidewalk. And they're like, what? It would be one thing if our sidewalks had been maintained regularly over time and we were just asking for someone to do the little bit of update. It's another thing to say the sidewalk turned into gravel 10 years ago and now it's your problem.
Well, and there's a full third of our city that has no sidewalks, not even a sidewalk to replace. You know, between 38th Street and 72nd Street, largely, the area that was built. Well, I'm just saying the area that was built during the township days, north to south, all of Turner, and most of our midtown area. By the time 72nd Street started, we had annexed and sidewalks were required again. But that whole area doesn't have stormwater, it doesn't have curb, it doesn't have sidewalk. And it's about 4 times the cost when you have to put in the storm sewer also. So our sidewalk master plan needs to look at what it's going to take to do the main arterials first. And the other priority that we have is near schools where kids are walking. We've got to put in the sidewalks where kids are walking, primarily to and from school. So I think it would be helpful, Mr. Bach, if we could kind of revisit the sidewalk plan in terms of what we're doing, and make sure that we have full commission input into how we prioritize that, and maybe even by district. Commissioner Philbrook?
Well, thank you, Mayor. You took care of District 8 for me.
The no
pretty
sidewalk
much.
portion?
Yeah, the no sidewalk portion, you know, our old township roads that just have the drainage ditches and about 40 or 50 years worth of asphalt built up, so everything just kind of, and no place for the kids to walk. So I would tell you that the biggest bite that I get all the time is those streets, 67th, 55th and
47th.
That's right. All of the north-south feeder places, because you have kids walking up and down those streets, and we don't have lights also on a lot of those streets, and so it's pretty dangerous. I would really, I appreciate you saying that, and I want my constituents to know that it's very expensive to put in those type. That's much more expensive than replacing sidewalks and curb in town that already have everything set up.
Well, and the other thing, I was talking to the mayor of Overland Park, and he said, because Overland Park went through and actually did a special assessment to put in all the curb and sidewalk in all the areas that just had drainage ditches. And it was a 20-year process in Overland Park. And it's going to take us that long, but we have to get started, because if we wait, it'll be 21 years.
So I would like to say thank you already to 67th Street around the grade school. That's beautiful. That was one of those sidewalk programs, and they did a wonderful job. And thank you, Mr. Tobin, and all of the engineers that had to do with that.
All right. Sidewalks, we're coming back to sidewalks. Do you agree with that?
18th, 13th, 10. That's it.
Well, and I guess that's one of the great things about this initiative, and you'll note, Brandon was careful in his verbiage, that I'm not coming to you and saying I'm reducing $160,000 of cost. Part of the efficiency of the money that's saved here is it's efficiency saving because I'm not wasting asphalt. This machine is going to use more asphalt. So we're actually going to have to put more money into buying asphalt because we're going to we're going to do more work with it. Yeah, that's a good problem. And I told that to the guys when we went through this. If you come back to me and tell me you need more asphalt money because we're filling all the potholes, great. The cruise, as you've noted, is not a reduction that we're proposing. It is to move those people into other areas so we can get into the sidewalks, into the curbs, do things we're not doing today, or we don't have time to get to.
Another large portion that seems to be one of the banes of most motorists is the sunken manhole problem. As everybody knows, when you do an overlay, it's hard to get it to match back up, and over time, these settle a little bit just due to regular beating of cars driving over them. Recent developments in technology has allowed for basically a giant hole saw that allows you to drill, this one in particular is 5 foot in diameter, drill around the manhole itself down to 14 inches and remove everything all in one fell swoop. And the video that I'll be showing here in a second, if everybody can indulge for a minute and a half, to do that takes 90 seconds, as opposed to about the normal hour and a half to 2 hours that it takes for our current method. So this will allow for a lot more efficient time. It'll allow a safer atmosphere for our workers that are out there trying to do this, because it'll allow people to focus on safety while one person is solely focused on the job itself. So if anybody has any qualms about seeing a short little video.
Let's see the video.
We love movies.
From the time it arrives at the site and starts up, it does take about 90 seconds to complete this removal. It's a carbide bit tooth saw, so the bits, the teeth themselves are replaceable as they wear out. And like I said, it goes down to 14 inches. It'll go through gravel, it'll go through concrete, asphalt, brick, pretty much anything you really run into. And because it cuts so deep down to 14 inches, it actually creates a structural base. So we're not just putting really a surface patch on the area, it's actually structurally sound to the real level of a road. So if we do concrete, we're looking at 30 plus years, asphalt, a little bit less. If you do concrete, you can dye the concrete and brush it in a manner kind of in the upper corner you see up here, so it looks pretty much like the surrounding road. The other nice factor about it is because it lifts it all up out in one piece, you can either transport it directly to the bed of a truck or trailer for disposal, or you can lay it back down on the ground, break the loose concrete and gravel, and reuse the collar if it's not damaged in any way. And as you can see, it fits right on the front of a standard uniloader or a Bobcat. They've actually got a mounting apparatus that it can go on the back of a track hoe as well. So there's several ways you can implement it.
And Brandon, you noted this is real time. So
Yes.
This is the actual time it takes us coming onto the street to do what's being done right here.
Yep.
And you said at the beginning, but how long does that take us to do what we just watched
To
today?
do that, once you get on site and get it running, about 90 seconds to bore a 14-foot or 14-inch.
What does it cost? How long does it take us today?
Today, about 3 hours worth of time to saw cut, jackhammer, remove, and it usually takes a crew of 4 to 5 people.
So it's important to note when we're looking at 5,000 in the city, not that we have to go do 5,000, but 1 to 2,000 and then the others keep going, we can't do them. I mean, you're 2 a day with a large crew working on it versus 1 or 2 people working this and plus the people that have to do the stopping on the street.
Yay. All right.
And this is only a $65,000 piece of equipment as opposed to everything else they bring me.
You mean the previous one was not 65,000?
Not quite. Yeah. And that 65 actually buys us multiple size of bits or holes. That way we can do all the way up to the 5-inch utility holes, or you can do down to the individual size hand holes for when those go bad as well. So, yeah.
That's great.
One of the next pieces we wanted to highlight is our commitment to the SOAR initiative. As everybody's heard, the SOAR initiative focused on three main pieces: the overall image of Wyandotte County, the safety of, or feeling of safety in Wyandotte County, and the overall appearance of Wyandotte County. This graphic shows we are well below the average of the KC metro area, which is the red lines, and the U.S. average of around cities our size. So these are three big things that SOAR took to focus on, and our piece is what we're going to kind of focus on here in the next slide that has to do with our Parks and Recreation staff as well as Public Works. Again, the same kind of information, just showing you the overall disparity or the magnitude of people who are dissatisfied. 66% are neutral or dissatisfied with the image, 71% and 72% are dissatisfied or neutral with the feeling of safety and appearance. Again, those are over 2/3 or almost 3/4 of the population. Those are staggering numbers. A couple of the major pieces of equipment that we bought to help out with this are 3 new zero-turn mowers, which you see down in the lower left-hand corner. These are 72-inch mowers, so you can do a lot pretty quickly with those. For some of the larger areas, we bought 2 new 11-foot wide area mowers. These have multiple decks on them. The side decks can be raised up, so if you've got obstructions in the way, things like that. And 1 large compact tractor with an offset flail mower that is meant for the really large areas that are more too rough to really take a finish type mower on. Also, we've brought before you some of the policy changes that we've made to our mowing program. We brought before you the tiered mowing system, which takes our lots and breaks them up into different levels of service based on the need, the area, and how effective we can really mow some of the areas. We've developed our asset management system a little more, as Jeff mentioned, implementing into Parks and Rec, the Lucidity system, which has allowed us to do some mapping and some work order tracking. So when we send somebody out to mow these lots, we have a better idea of when they're finished, how long it's taken to do these kind of things, and what the real cost is to us. And that's what this map shows here below. It faded out a little bit, but you're seeing a couple different things. The different colors are the different levels of service that you see. And the hatched areas are ones that have been code issues that the UG has had to go in and maintain anyway, even though they are privately owned. We have sent out our first initial notice to these residents or to these locations saying that we've seen this issue in the past, and if we continue to see this, we'll have to take action. Also, we have reallocated a few staff from our streets division, from our quick response trash team. They're now helping out on the mowing side when they're not attending to those immediate needs. And also, we've looked to add a few new staff members too to our mowing group.
Great. Commissioner McKiernan?
Just 2 things. First of all, I've already seen what I consider a dramatic improvement in the upkeep of and the mowing of these lots. So job well done. But can you imagine this? I shared a photo with Jeremy when I got here tonight. So I shared a photo with Jeremy to show that we still have to continue to pay attention to detail and to quality work. A couple of land bank lots that got cut today, and the 2 things that stuck out for me, something that Commissioner Townsend's mentioned before, there was no trimming around signs or fire hydrants, and mowing over trash instead of picking it up before you mow. So a little trash hidden in tall grass is actually less unsightly than a whole bunch of shredded trash thrown all over the place. So dramatic improvement. Keep it up. I know we're going to get better.
Commissioner Philbrook?
So I really do appreciate the good work that's going on in my district and also up and down State Avenue. But I do have a clarification question. Did I hear properly not too long ago that we were or were not going to mow along the sidewalks on State Avenue?
The right-of-way, yes. A part of the mowing strategy, we had shared that this year we'll continue to mow right-of-way where we have been mowing right-of-way. at a lesser
So
level
in other
of
words, a
service.
little bit toward the inside and
Right behind
over
the curb. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. And then next year, that would stop. And we would.
We're going to have a mess if you do that.
We're providing
on state.
notifications. We're providing notifications. It's possible. It's possible to have a few things to work on. But
Yeah.
it'd be a
We
little
will.
bit of a transition. But again, it's similar, similar to the pothole patcher. If we can reduce that kind of work activity, then we can focus those resources on other core responsibilities. So that's the idea there.
Well, my comment has a lot to do with the impression people have of the city if we don't maintain the mowing along the sidewalks up and down these boulevard-type streets we have.
Right.
I mean, you know, it's going to start looking trashy, and so I'm just going to say that. That's, you know. But I do appreciate them picking up the trash out at 78th and, at 72nd and State Avenue before they mow. It sure does look a lot nicer that way. Thank you.
I also have a question. Weed control on our medians and property that we own. We did spray them this year, looked a lot better. Are we going to do any kind of pre-emergent training? Is there a plan for keeping up with that weed control rather than a one-time?
Well, there's maybe a couple of things there. We just got bids on spraying for weeds on all UG and land bank and those kinds of lots, hopefully to reduce the frequency of mowing this summer, just to get a better handle on the weeds. I think the medians are sprayed twice a year.
Spring and fall?
Certain, right, or a spring and maybe a midsummer.
Mr. Tobin wants to answer that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
If I could, Mayor, Commissioners, the bids that Jeff is referring to was for what you approved last year for us to go ahead and bid that and start to spray not only the medians as we have been, which are sprayed 3 times a year, but to spray the lots. And we're going to try to spray all the lots twice through this season. Hopefully, you know, if we have a normal year where we don't have it wet and end up mowing into October like we have the last couple, we should see a real improvement on those lots in terms of weed control. Personally, I think the medians look better than they've ever looked.
They do. The spraying really helped.
And Jeremy and Jack and their crews have done a real good job with that. And we hope to get all the lots the same way. Brandon's going to go into this slide right now, and this will help explain what's a little bit of a different program due to SOAR and how the lots are going to improve. Yeah. I hope that helps.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to join Commissioner McKiernan in acknowledging the work that I've noticed already, the change that's been very positive. I've seen some of these land bank lots and some of the other empty lots that we own already on their second cutting. And not only that, I've noticed a difference in the quality. There's still some that we get the shredded trash, which looks horrible, and the weed whacking and trim is not being done in some cases, but overall it's an improvement. So you will be receiving an email from me that identified these last couple of weeks, the lots that I've seen cut, because I want to know who's done them. They should be commended. And for those who didn't quite step up, maybe next time they'll step up. But it is an improvement, and I wanted to acknowledge the staff and on down the line of whoever's doing it. Seems like we got an earlier start this year than last year. Last year, we were kind of slow getting out there. Now, to those constituents who are listening, I know I'm still getting calls, but it's an improvement. I want to acknowledge that for what I have seen. Thank you.
I'd also like to take a 2-second detour and just say our streets and parks workers, several of them came over yesterday and today. We had a delivery from Feed the Children through Rotary Club of 75,000 books to give away to the students in District 500. $800,000 worth of books that were delivered on 3 tractor trailers. And now we had a crisis of how to get those distributed. And our Parks and Street Department stepped up and provided vehicles and manpower to help get those books distributed. And every child, before they leave for the summer, from every school in District 500 will take home at least 3 books each. And so it was really a great effort. So going above and beyond, not just cutting grass, but getting out there and helping kids get books. So that was a great effort as well that we might not otherwise have heard of. So thank you. All right. Any other questions around equipment strategy or plans? All right.
Okay, next section I want to talk about is a few CMIP projects. First one I'm going to note, and these are really ones that we have built into our budget, though there are some changes to them or additional direction that I'm looking for. So the first one I have is the Juvenile Justice Center. This is a project that you approved, so I have authority to go forward and build this project and working on it, and we're going through the design. As part of that design, we've identified some potential changes that we think could be better for us in the long-term future. So there's a lot of detail to this. So we want to come back as a special session on June 15th and really go through what we're looking at with the center, how it will be built out, some proposed recommendations to add some things to it now, but also look at really what could be a 5 to 10 year phase of changes made to buildings that are in our county infrastructure in the courthouse. So it's not just the new juvenile facility, but it's the old federal building that we're taking some space from and some things that we're doing over at the courthouse, and kind of do more of a long-range plan to show you how we think this may be a good idea. Obviously we're not committing to projects 5 years out, but at least to develop a plan and put that in play as what we might be doing, and then how we might tweak this budget a little bit on the juvenile center to make it better now. Another one we have is the Quiet Zone. Last year, you all authorized staff to move forward on the Quiet Zone project as far as going through and doing our analysis of it, looking at it, saying, how would we get this done? Have communication with the cities of Bonner Springs and Edwardsville, get their input back. I believe the direction was they needed to have some play in this. They needed to be part of the project, and then we bring this back. So I think we want to go through what we've done a little bit tonight, and I'll tell you where we're ending up. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon. He's going to go through a few steps, and then I'll follow with it. Brandon?
Thank you. So we wanted to touch on the schedule a little bit, where we're currently at. Currently, we've submitted our notice of interest to the Union Pacific Railroad. Anytime you're doing anything around a railroad, they like to see what's going on. They've got a review period where they're looking at it. They looked at it once and asked us for some more details, so we just got that back to them, so they're looking at it again. During this time, we're working on coordination with City of Edwardsville, City of Bonner, UP, and KDOT. That way we can all get together, agree on some of the terms of what we're looking at proposing to do, and actually meeting on site to look at some of the potential safety concerns, how they're going to be addressed, who's responsible for addressing them, that kind of stuff. Currently, we don't have since we haven't approved or finished all that, we're not at the time where we can be approved to go to design. But what we're looking at is once we get that approval, we can then move from design phase to notice to proceed in about 12 to 18 months. We haven't set a construction time limit yet, so that's where we're sitting currently.
Commissioner Philbrook.
Are you saying that approval from the other 2 cities to move ahead? Is that what you're saying, or what are you saying? Because it's kind of all slurred together there.
No, I think what we're looking at is this is where I believe we're at today. So we've got all the notice of need. We've talked to the other communities about what's in play. A couple of the key factors were, for the other communities, what's their cost going to be? And so one, our overall cost, we had showed a placeholder in the budget for $2.3 million to make this happen. As we've gone through and refined it, we believe we can make it happen for less than $1.5 million.
Make what happen exactly?
The Quiet Zone off the 4 areas we talked about. And we'll touch base on what those 4 areas are to remind you again. there was an ongoing operational cost that was identified. That was a key thing, then that would be going forever. After communicating with the railroad, talking about the existing arms that were down in place, we have the feedback from them that that will not be an operational cost we would have to assume because they're already covering that cost today. So that was an ongoing operational cost. We were saying that, okay, well, we may do the capital project here, but those cities need to pick up that cost because it's going to be in their communities. That's really been taken off the table at this point. We don't think there'll be that ongoing operational cost associated with this. So if you step through these slides, and why don't you explain, so these are the 4 different crossing areas that we're looking at, and I'll comment, I guess, when we get to the next one.
This first crossing is 98th Street, just south of K32. What we'd be proposing to do here is adding some medians on each side of the crossing, which will allow the current gates that are there to function as they are and not allow people to go around them with the medians being there. That's why there's not that additional ongoing cost, because we're not adding more elements to the crossing itself. It'll also include some sidewalk improvements stretching down to the extent of the mill and overlay or the road resurfacing that'll be done, and also some concrete crossing elements within the rail bed itself that will make for a smoother transition for bike and pedestrian people. Or the next crossing, which...
Wait a minute.
Yep.
Is there a lot of bike and pedestrian traffic on that bridge?
It's not a bridge.
Or crossing, I mean?
No, but anytime you improve a crossing like this, you have to add that element.
I think one thing, though, to your point, Commissioner, which is right on play with these, is what we're proposing in each one of these crossings is that we are only going to do the sidewalk element that is there required to the railroad and to the crossing. And some of the initial look we had to this was we had sidewalk running south and north all the way out of that. We feel like that's back to the local community. If they want to do that additional sidewalk area, then that would be on them to go in and put those dollars in to make that happen. We only do what's right there around the railroad.
I know it's a simplistic statement, but I thought these things that we're doing, isn't part of what we're trying to do is to cut down the number of times they blow their horn?
Yes, sir.
So this will stop blowing horns at this?
Yes.
That's correct, because with the inclusion of the medians, it limits the ability for a car to go around the existing gates, so that prevents the need for the audio warning or the horns.
But the railroad, the UP is on board, because I thought there was a problem with the way they viewed their responsibility to blow their horn, whether the crossing was correct or not. Am I wrong?
There were several different design possibilities that could alleviate that, but they were initially concerned, but some of the newer designs have alleviated some of that.
All right.
The Union Pacific has been involved in this and has given design specifications, and it was really the missing piece, because a lot of the engineering that was done that gave us the increased cost was because we couldn't get the railroad to give input. Now that the railroad has given input, we have design much more specific at a lower cost, and we've learned that we don't need to do the ongoing $15,000 per crossing ongoing annual maintenance fee anymore as well. So we've learned a lot engaging with the engagement of the railroad, which was really hard to get a hold of the railroad. Yes.
So Mayor, on this, let's see, where do I want to say this? Well, so these are the crossings we're talking about, and
Yes.
those are the ones we're talking about. Those are the only ones we're talking about.
These 4 are the
Yes.
4 that have been identified for this project.
With this project.
There was a larger study up and down the corridor of what could be included, but this was the target area that we went after, starting off one end, and we had to do at least 4, wasn't that the criteria, in order to make a quiet zone actually become a quiet zone and cover a few miles.
Correct. You have to do a certain distance, and you can't start or stop on a private crossing.
I know that. Thank you. But I also know that I have people that heard we were talking about a quiet zone on K32, and the whole thing was under study. And up till now, most of the people out there didn't have a clue there was only going to be that short amount that we were going to work on.
This represents a number of miles through Edwardsville. How many, this is what, a 4-mile stretch?
I think that's about right, yes.
So this is the bulk of it.
Not where my people live.
I'm saying of the area that was studied, the original study, this is the bulk of the length because this is where the crossings are the closest together.
I understand that, but
We've heard from residents that are more in the area of, what, about 57th to 61st Street in there that live north of Cod Drive, that have expressed a lot of interest in a project like this. You know, when we, operating from where we were last year on the budget, you know, as we came through and said, we did this first phase, it was in this area, and
well,
pretty good number to work with at that point. You know, and if we like this and think this is a future benefit and where we go, we can look at doing additional intersections.
so Doug, what I will say is I appreciate all your work on this. I would have, though, appreciated being kept up to date a little bit more on where you were putting your emphasis. Now, let me finish what I have to say, because I really like the project, but I have to be able to tell folks what's going on so they understand, okay, why they got shook out, so to speak, of it. The other thing is that there's no law against them honking their horn, so to speak, or blowing their horn. They always have the right to do that. And even though it's marked and it's supposed to tell them, the codes are supposed to tell them as they come through, that there's no danger, you know, they always have the right to blow their horn. Let's just pray they pay attention to our millions of dollars.
I believe that's correct.
Commissioner?
Well, I just wanted to comment. I'm recalling our discussion about this last year. The original recommendation was by the study, was to do 11 crossings, and I believe the cost was around $6 million, and that's what I recommended that we consider as a commission. During the discussion, it was decided that we did not want to do the entire 11 crossings, but we wanted to do step 1. Staff recommended, recommended, I think, 3 crossings at that point. Staff said 4 would be better because for the additional crossing, you would get many more miles of quiet zone for the money. So that's how 4 crossings out of 11 were settled on. I would be a big advocate of doing all 11. And maybe we could think about in 2018 budget, do step 2, which would increase.
I would appreciate a step-by-step sort of approach to this, instead of just saying that we're going to do this section.
This commission decided last summer to do this section in this meeting. So
This particular section?
I will, yes.
We sure did.
Yes, we sure did.
This particular section?
We did. We made the decision to study this section, and I'm bringing it back tonight because
Study's not the
you didn't
same
give
as
me
doing.
authority to go do this section. You said, we're not going to do 11. We'll consider a phased approach. Our team went back, broke
heard
it
the
down,
phase.
showed these 4. This would make sense. We could do this initially, and we gave an estimated cost, but we had a lot of preliminary analysis that was done, so we've actually cut $1 million off of what was projected to be in the cost. And then the ongoing to say, okay, this is what we could really do it for. And that's where I'm coming back tonight to say, okay, if you want me to move forward, I can do this part of it that we've studied for less than $1.5 million. I think our message back to the other cities would be, this is how we'll do it through the quiet zone. Here's a recommendation for doing sidewalks in such an area, and flip to the next slide, Brandon. You know, like on 4th Street, which is on the right side, you can see a trail where people, you can't see it on this map, but people walk from the post office and cut across that railroad track. We're going to build a fence because it's a safety issue along the rail there. So if they want to put a sidewalk to do in there, if not, then we're going to do the intersection and make it make it fit within. So we'd spend the money, do that section of the quiet zone, and we've done a study looking at 7 more sections down the road. And if we feel like this is the direction we want to go, we can continue to move in that way. We would have to do similar to what we did this year. I'm assuming, guys, I haven't had that follow-up discussion, but we'd need to break out probably another section of it. We could do it all of it, or maybe break it in half and say, we want to go out and study those, refine, get a better budget for it, and then come back and say that's what it would take to do the next areas.
Well, I'm not asking that it be done. I'm asking that we find out what it would take to be done and what kind of a stepwise it would take. That's what I'm saying.
So let's do this. It sounds like we are, because this was such a new idea the last couple of years, that there was a lot of discussion about whether or not we'd even explore it. I think we know that all over southern Johnson County, there are quiet zones everywhere. And I think Commissioner Walters has done a lot of that research. Once people see the benefit of 50 trains not blowing their horn 4 times, this is going to eliminate like 200 horn blows a day in Edwardsville. When people see the benefit, I think people are going to want to extend it. And I think getting this done, and if we want to go ahead and fund this one this year and do the continued study to get the rest of it out, and then we can see what the next chunk we want to do. I think we're going to end up doing all of it when people see the benefit.
Well, especially with the cross street there by Bill's West 32.
65th Street.
Yeah, because that's an absolutely dangerous crossing in itself.
And the railroad
Wants to eliminate that one.
they want to improve it altogether. And so that's where we actually finally got their interest, because they have, what we finally learned when we finally got Union Pacific at the table, which took months, is they have been working on this corridor for a long time because they hate having 11 crossings with the trucks and the pedestrians and the bicycles. They have so much traffic going across this railroad track, it's a hazard for them. And so they've been studying it, but they hadn't been talking to us. And so this solution starts to look at a whole corridor. And the one at 65th and Kansas, I believe they highlighted because of the amount of semi-trucks going across it and the proximity to Kansas Avenue and 32, it's the most dangerous.
Yeah, they said, I believe, that they'd like to eliminate that crossing. Or,
I think
you
we
know.
should eliminate that particular crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a real positive, you know, and they
Yeah,
even
there's 2 ways
fund,
in
they
there.
even bring money when municipalities are willing to eliminate crossings. So that's all good.
Yes. Yes, Commissioner Bynum.
Mr. Bach, I just want to reiterate basically what's in here to make sure that I'm understanding it. The new estimate of the cost for the 4 crossings is the 1.5 million, correct?
Yes.
And the 2 cities, Bonner and Edwardsville, we have spoken with city staff and basically told them there is no cost to you. Is that correct?
Well, we haven't taken this message back to them. We've gone through it. They've been part of the information and recognize that there's no cost of a ongoing operation. They've heard the same information that we have.
Okay.
So they're aware of that. I think they're aware that there's some reduced cost, but we have not taken the proposal back to them to say, look, we're taking out the local sidewalk portion of this that was built in, and we're just doing the crossings.
Okay.
If you want to build the sidewalks within your community and make that more beneficial for your residents, that's your call. As a county, we're coming through and doing just the quiet zone act.
And it's the county side of the budget where this would occur. Are there economic benefits to any city that would do this?
Ergonomic
Or
benefits.
economic, or, I mean, I think there's quality of life benefits.
Yeah, and I think you see varying numbers that have come in there. I apologize, I don't have that information with me, but there are some where I've looked at different cities that have done these, and then they've seen new construction built up in the areas around, whereas today you'll come in and look at an area along where there's 58 train blasts go through a day that you'll say, or 58 trains, that they won't build in that area. So in areas where they've established the quiet zones, then you are starting to see construction and people are willing to build houses, apartment complexes in those areas. So that is one economic benefit that comes. I think it also is on the commercial side. It was kind of hard to put together specific data about that. There's probably some analysis we could work on in that regard that
It's
I
more
think you're making a lot of
curiosity.
assumptions with it,
Yeah.
but we have directly seen it's kind of like probably when you look at the light rail system that's come into play in Kansas City, Missouri, now they're seeing development come in and out around it because it's an attraction. Well, there's a distraction here now that people don't build around as frequently.
I think Commissioner Walter's email from a constituent is my favorite story about this. About the person that complained to you
Yes.
about this project.
The email was something about fire stations, and he said, I voted for you because I wanted you to do the right thing, and we need these fire stations. And I looked up his address, and he lived in Piper. And so I sent an email back and said, I support the fire stations, but I have to say, I represent District 7, so I don't think you're in my district. And he said, oh yeah, I used to live in Edwardsville, but I had to move out because of the constant train noise. So he moved up to Piper. So I might just mention a couple additional things to what Doug said. We talked about 4 crossings, but if you look at this, you're actually going to see 5. And the reason it's 5 is because the original recommendation was to terminate the quiet zone at that crossing that is highlighted. The railroad that's a private crossing, so the proposal was to make it a public crossing, which required right-of-way acquisition, road building, all that stuff. The railroad came back to us and said, you know, if you would move the quiet zone 1 crossing further west and make it 5, we could let you get by with a very minimal approach to addressing that private crossing. So what is currently in the $1.5 million is actually 5 crossings, the one on the right being the westernmost crossing at called the Swingster Crossing. This takes care of all the crossings in the western edge except the private crossing going to the shooting range in Bonner Springs. That's a particular sore subject with the city because a lot of the retailers along Front Street get the 200 blasts of the horn. So in the last conversation or the last meeting we had, Bonner Springs is currently planning to move forward on taking care of that crossing themselves. So of the 11, they would take care of that one, taking 1 crossing out of the overall scheme that we would have to achieve.
So the minimum thing we have to do on the private one, the minimum thing we have to do on the private one is like a gate?
No, it would still, it wouldn't, well, you mean, it has a gate now. That's what confused me. But no, it would probably have to have a crossing. The other element of this, and we're getting a little bit into the weeds.
Yeah, I know.
Edwardsville would like to relocate this crossing because they think from an economic development standpoint, if this crossing were about a half mile further west, it would improve the value of the property on the south side.
Okay.
If that happens, that would be completely at their cost as a part of that
Well,
development.
the reason I was asking is because I think we have a couple, 1 or 2 more private ones further east.
Yeah,
don't
we sure do.
That's why I'm asking about that. Thank you.
Commissioner Walker.
Since we've now gone through this, what is it that we want to do tonight? You want us to kind of acknowledge, go ahead, don't go ahead, what?
That's what I was after coming in tonight, since this is it was 2.5, but now we're down to $1.5 million in the budget that as I'm building everything, this governing body did not give me clear authority to say, go study, and if you can do it, build it, like we do on our road projects. That's how those come forth. It was go study it, analyze it, come back here with what it's going to actually take to do it, and present. And what I am showing you with the staff is that we would go forward. We've taken out the ongoing operational cost. It's about $1.5 million. You asked me to have a local participation component in this. I'm offering to you to let those jurisdictions decide what they want to do, but we just stop, I'll use terminology, stop at the curb, but it's stop at the edge of what we're required to do on each side for the sidewalks or any type of trails. And if they want to build the rest of that, they go build it. Our study showed us doing, longer things connecting into K32. That'll be a local decision they can do with their own if they want to do it. So I believe if we want to move forward with the quiet zone study, authorization $1.5 million, we'll be able to move with these 4 or 5 intersections, along with how Bonner Springs would do on that last one.
I'm all for us going forward with that. I love all the work you've done with it, okay? I would just ask that we be very cordial and keep Edwardsville in the conversation, especially for that major crossing there, for them to be on board with how they're gonna fit their stuff in to make it work for them. That's all.
Certainly.
Commissioner Townsend?
Just a couple of questions. The 1.5, is that for the total project cost? Are we spending that for so many years, or that will take care of these 4 or the extra 5?
Total cost.
Gentlemen?
That would be these 5 crossings, and it
Total
would cover
cost.
everything that's been highlighted, yes.
Okay. Well, I hope it is successful because Commissioner Bynum alluded to other benefits. You've got the safety aspect, I guess, listening to this, and definitely quality of life. It's nothing like getting into a peaceful sleep. I don't know how many of those 200 blasts are in the daytime, 220, but you certainly don't want to hear it 2 a.m., 3:30 a.m., 4 a.m. So as we look to better the Northeast End, that's certainly something I hope is successful and would be well used in Fairfax, so. Got my
All right.
vote.
That's good. All right, thank you.
Okay, the next section I have is on parks. And a little bit different from this perspective, but I wanted to highlight some of the things we're working on and whether we want to make adjustments. Parks Master Plan, key to the overall, not a decision on anything there other than the fact to inform you that's coming back on May 25th. So next week, we'll have the special session. That'll be unveiled, talk about how that's all going to come together. So we're long awaited to have that happen. One of the key things as I'm moving forward and building the budget is you give us direction to move forward on the accessible playground. We'd estimated a cost of around $500,000 to make this happen. We budgeted $100,000 in 2017 from our casino money allocated to parks to go into this program. To date, we've had luck in getting about $150,000 in grants that could go toward this accessible playground. So as you can do the math, that's about halfway to get there. We believe there may be some continued grant opportunities out there that we can work on to get this done, though we're just halfway with our allocation and the grant money coming in. So as I build the budget, I was just looking do we want to wait for those grants and work on that, or should I be putting more dollars, UG dollars, into this accessible playground project? And that's the question I was posing to see where you're at, because the direction last year was put 100 in and go get grants to build the rest.
Commissioner Markley?
I'm just curious whether that discussion should be part of the May 25th discussion, because presumably that master plan is going to give some input into both perhaps the Piper Area Park and to this idea of the accessible playground and the priorities of how we manage the parks that we have.
Well, I don't disagree with that. Unfortunately, I will not be here on the 25th.
Oh, how?
And I want to be clear that obviously I consider this somewhat of my baby. I think it's important that this park be built. I've not in any way suggested to Jeremy where it should go. I don't care where it goes. Where it's best needed or where it serves the purpose for which it's being built is what this county needs. And so I've left that to the professionals to come up with the best location, presumably a place that has some adequate parking, perhaps accessible to some kind of public transportation or special transport. I think, you know, I guess it just depends on what your priorities are. To me, this is as important a priority as a new police car, or a new transit bus, or a piece of fire apparatus. And we drop those sums of money, and it seems like to me we're a city that does not, we have some equipment at various parks, but we don't have a park where these children can go with their families. And I don't have the current number, but I think the number is significant, the kids that would fit within the definition of challenged, special, whatever term of art you want to use to describe the benefits of this park. Now, we're lucky in having our Parks Director having built one of these in Independence. If you've gone out there and viewed it, you can see why these things are destinations for families with children. I'm hopeful that the commission will give the go-ahead for the project and at some point figure out where the money's budget the money and continue looking for grants. I would like to see ground broke on this before the end of the year for obvious reasons, as you all know. But it's up to you whether you see it as enough of a priority to, but certainly I expect us to make a decision on a vote for this or not, to move it into this year's budget. Thank you.
Is your goal to move it into 2017 or 2018 budget? Do you want it in 2017 budget?
Well, I would like to, I mean, if we have it in 2018, obviously, I would like the spot picked and designated by the professional staff, and I'd like to have the ribbon cutting, or the turning the dirt, or whatever you want to call it. I don't even care about that. If that's in 2018, that's fine, as long as we're committed to move forward with it in the next year. I don't care when it is. Whether we do it before I leave office or not is immaterial.
I'll recognize Jeremy Rogers, our Parks Director, and I think it's a matter of whether we probably identify the location where the park, and then probably the funding to construction is probably going to be an 18 project, wouldn't it, just practically?
Right, correct. Correct. The master plan does address where the best places, the 5 best places throughout the county to put an accessible playground.
One of the things I'm going to ask, are you going to present that on May 25th, those locations?
I will speak to the Vireo, the company that's doing that, and make sure that they do address that.
That'd be great, because one of the things I think we've looked only at our current park grounds, and I think there are some opportunities for locations that are not current park grounds that would give maximum bang for the buck for this accessible playground. And I think we can talk about that next week as well.
But can Commissioner Walker get maybe a preview of those 5 potential locations, since he won't be there on the 25th, so that he can provide some feedback, hopefully
Absolutely.
in advance of that?
Absolutely.
You don't know how much I regret not being able to be here on the 25th. If there's any way I could get out of it, I would, but I can't.
We understand. We all have conflicts. So.
And had I known a month ago that this date was going to be the accessible park, maybe I could have picked an alternate date, but now I'm locked in.
I get it.
So I'm sorry, but my absence should not be taken by anyone as an indication that I have less than complete passion for this. And
I think the question, and I'm seeing some heads nod, so I'm seeing a consensus. Are people comfortable with getting this moving forward and finding the other $250,000? Okay. I'm not seeing any disagreement with that, so let's plan on it.
Good.
And
Thank
then
you
we need to pick the location. Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you. As we talk about accessibility and for a new playground, one of the other things I would like us to consider formally is what we're doing with our current parks and the restroom facilities there. To me, that's an accessibility issue, a necessity issue as we work on our parks and they're looking better. I mean, that's an obvious flaw in a lot of them. We need to address that situation, I think, immediately.
That's in the master plan, is it not?
That is correct. It is in the master plan. I don't want to give too much away for next week, but the top two priorities that were identified were restrooms and shelters are our two #1 priorities.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, the last item on here is an initiative for a new park in the Piper area, which has been brought up and to my attention, and there's a variation here between the look to fund activities to come into it, though I think that may be a little premature to be able to build funding for a park until we've really done community aid engagement. Some of this may come from the study, but talks about location, amenities. There's some available ground that we own that appear to be fairly affordable to come in and do activities with, though until we really take a look at that ground and study it and see what may need to be cleaned out or covered, it's hard for us to come in from a staff perspective and say, oh, we could do this for $300,000 or something like that. So I wanted to tee it up as part of this, that could be an initiative with a cost to come into this. We didn't build in money to build a new park yet. In the 2018 budget, we put some money in our initiatives to put another 100,000 or maybe a couple 100,000 that we're looking at, but building a whole new park is a financial issue that would come on. We'd need to spend a little more study time, I think, to make it happen.
Is that part of did that fall into part of your, what they're studying as far as the park out west?
Yes, it does address that issue.
Thank you.
Can you just go ahead and give us that study right now?
We just want to know what we're going to get next time.
All right.
All right, so with that, that completes our presentation on areas we were covering, those that I guess I looked at from a project perspective that I had a lot of question about, and would leave it open as you went through and looked at projects about other questions you may have.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you. I just had a few. First of all,
and excuse me, Commissioner, if anybody needs a sheet, a copy, I think we have additional copies of the project sheets that we passed out 2 weeks ago. So if you don't have it electronic or in hard copy, raise your hand and we can get you a copy if you want one. Emmerich?
Commissioner Townsend.
Go ahead, Commissioner, I'm sorry.
No worries. First of all, I wanted to say that I really appreciated the addition of the target line and the variance line for each section. It really allowed us, without having to sit and do some mental math, to see how each section fit into the overall. And so that was very helpful on that. On debt projects, first page, I think you already answered this for me tonight. Fiber connectivity projects, it's new for 18, and that is things like the system that's going to be required to get, store, and communicate the body camera video.
There's multiple pieces of the fiber connectivity projects. That's why it's such a larger initiative that we're pushing for. The body cameras is one of the largest ones that does include the storage and stuff like that. Other pieces include improvements to traffic cameras, things like, and connectivity to high accessibility areas, potential for schools, fire stations, other police stations, things like that. But the body cameras is the primary focus that we're going on, yes.
Was Google Fiber at one point going to actually connect public buildings?
We do have connection with Google Fiber to our buildings.
We do.
It doesn't serve this purpose.
And what's missing? Bandwidth, point-to-point connectivity?
Yep.
Well, kind of the path that we're heading down is this would end up being a private network that we would have control of totally.
Okay.
And so the difference is that it would be we would have control over where it goes, how fast it is. We would support it, whereas the Google connections they're just community connections. They're not business. They're not business class.
No, they certainly aren't.
They don't have the support necessary to run a body camera system on, because we want somebody there like that to fix it, and they don't provide that.
Okay,
so.
thank you. On cash finance projects, under City General Fund, very first section, the last of the new line says Major Facilities Improvements City, and then there's a Major Facilities Improvements County down under County General Fund. And I noticed that these dollar amounts starting in 18 are like 30,000, 50,000. That doesn't seem like a dollar figure that qualifies as a major facility improvement. And I'm just curious, what kinds of projects are we anticipating under that?
We took this opportunity to take some of the smaller line items in the budget, some of the individual floor remodels, some of the new carpeting, things like that, and cluster them into this particular category.
Got it.
So that's what that line item is. So anytime we get requests for, building new walls in an office or something like that, new carpet, new ceiling, new paint, we're going to kind of cluster them together in this account code. That way we can get a better funding source.
So then you have a breakout that shows all the detail of this, and we don't need to see that. And
we can supply a
keep the
breakout if
detail.
needed, but yes, we
No.
do have that.
No, it's all on you.
Yes.
All right, so in the next section, under community programs, the first item is Village West Parkway lighting. And I was curious, is this repair, replacement, some new lighting we don't already have? Because it's quite a chunk of money in 18.
What page are you on?
I'm on the very first page. It's under community programs on the cash. It's line 61064, Village West Parkway lighting, 430 for 18.
Under cash finance project.
Cash finance projects. I'm done with that. I'm all on cash now.
Commissioner, that is the project to extend the lighting from I-70 and Village West Parkway around the west side where it does not exist right now. And we've pushed that out over the years, trying to get our partner to participate in part of that. If you drive that now and after race events, it's very, very dark out there. I know we have streetlight problems throughout the whole county, but this was a program that's been in there for a while.
Okay.
And that's what the funding's for.
Thank you. Same section under community programs. It's the last of the black ink, and it's before the trail network. It says ST street lighting upgrades. And there's nothing funded here, although there is another street lighting upgrade that is down a little bit further that does have some money attached to it. And my main point here is, do we have, or are we considering at all, any sort of initiative to upgrade our sodium vapor heads to LED?
Oh my gosh, can I start? The City of Independence replaced all of their streetlights in one fell swoop with a company program where the installation, the capital cost and the installation was rolled into a debt financing piece where the savings alone paid for it. I absolutely want to do that. We've been in dialogue with the Board of Public Utilities about that. If we paid the electrical on that, I think it would already be in front of us to do. Because BPU pays the electric on it, they're more hesitant to do it, and it's been an ongoing negotiation with BPU. My piece to BPU is, why wouldn't you do it? Because it's non-revenue electricity that you're burning, and you would save money immediately by converting them all to LED. And it would improve the look of our city, the safety of our city. Across the board, it'd be a giant win. And they last longer. I mean, you can just go on and on and on about the benefits. Because we own them and BPU pays the electricity, it would simply be drawing up a memorandum of understanding to get it done. It would also give us the opportunity to roll into that project pole upgrades and filling in missing gaps in our community. This could be a major project that the savings alone would pay for in its entirety.
Well, Seattle did it, San Diego did it,
Look,
LA did it.
there's no excuse why we're not doing it. And I would say we've been talking to BPU for the last year about this to try to get it done. And I think we need to get this done. This is low-hanging fruit for our community, both in terms of savings and quality of life.
All right. I'll come back to street lighting improvements in a moment, but in the next section under fire, I noticed that fire station, the third line, Fire Station 3 parking lot replacement, we were really originally budgeted, the amended has zeroed that out. I guess it doesn't need replacement, or we have...
On which one?
It's the third line down, it's 8067 Fire Station 3 parking lot replace. Originally budgeted for 75, amended budget has zeroed it.
That's because it's already underway, Commissioner.
Okay, perfect.
I think they had funding for this in both 2016 and 2017, and the 2016 funding was going to cover the cost of this. It's
Beautiful.
complete. It's complete now.
On the next page, third section is urban planning. This is not something that anybody, I think, here at this table can necessarily answer, but it's an answer that I'd be curious to get. The first item under urban planning is revised zoning code. We funded it for this year and for next year, and I'm just curious as to when that process will get underway.
Well, the process is starting now.
Okay.
I mean, and that's really one where we go out and we are bidding to get the services to come in and then start to work through it. Though, since we're doing it on over a 2-year time period, it's more of one where you start this year and then use the budget and move into the next year. So it's one contract that'll be let for both.
Okay, because there have been just a few things that have been kind of held up because we're waiting for this zoning code revision to get completed.
It'll be next year before you get it completed.
All right.
Can I add to that before you move to the next one?
You may.
It says new Armadale plan, new Central Avenue area plan. I think based on our discussions with Indian Springs, we need new Midtown plan. Is that somewhere else in here?
It is not.
Thank you, Mayor.
I think that needs to be added. If there's consensus by this group to do that, I think that was the basis of our discussion.
See, from what was that, from where to where on State?
I'd like to see it from 38th Street to 72nd Street, with Indian Springs being the anchor at the center. We could call it the State Avenue Corridor Study, or we could call it the Midtown Study. But I
Call it
think,
anything you want to, as long as you do it.
yeah.
What are we going to get out of this study?
Well, hopefully, for me, getting an idea of,
I mean for the people that we all represent.
Well, I think
that's what I would be talking about.
You said me, but
Well, because I represent them. They're not here. So my comment to you is they would really like to know what we really intend to do up and down State Avenue and what we intend to do with the shopping center, because we really haven't been back to them in quite a long time about that. We've been talking about, like a new Zona Rosa there, but well, y'all know that's not going to happen. But we do need to be real, and as the mayor said, we're going to be having some conversations around this, I do believe, right?
Well, I think the whole idea is the same thing we did with the Rosedale Master Plan. You get public input on the front side about what people want, and then you can go out and actively make that happen. The Healthy Campus, what the free market wanted in the Healthy Campus was blight, and that's exactly what we have downtown in a lot of areas. But we did a public engagement about what people wanted, and out of that public engagement, we have a Healthy Campus coming forward, but we've had to will it into existence. We've had to go out and raise money. We've had to go out and reshape what the private sector was willing to do. Same thing with 18th and I-70. The private sector wanted a truck stop and a hotel. We wanted a real service to our community and went out and built it. So I think it's going to take that kind of planning to get the public input, because I think one of the things we heard with the public input on Indian Springs was people want to have input up front and not on the backside of a plan. So I think that's what we hope to gain, and it's a strategy we've employed in other places. It's been very successful.
It's definitely helped on Leavenworth Road, I know that.
Okay, Commissioner McKiernan, you're still going.
I'm still going. Well, stopped temporarily, but now I'm going again.
Before you go there, can I jump in real quick?
You may.
With regards to while we're in the plan, only because we're in the urban planning area, we have identified the area of the Northeast Master Plan, which is underway right now, as I understand. One of the things that I've heard from constituents, and I think that it's fair to bring to front, is they often say you put together a plan and then it just sits on a shelf. What are you going to do with it? And so for that reason, I'm
we got hundreds of those in this building.
Exactly.
Can you turn your mic on, sir?
So for that reason, I'd like to see some thought, more than thought, some money put in towards implementation, not in the sense of we need to implement or pay for the whole amount of it, but at least to show that once this thing has been established, that we have some monies put aside to help get this thing started beyond just the putting together of the plan itself and bringing it to the persons that are.
The mayor had asked me to turn my mic on so my comment could be recorded. We got hundreds of studies in this building sitting on shelves that were never implemented. Wonderful plans, wonderful dreams. I don't know how much clearer the people could have been already what they wanted Indian Springs. And I don't think we're going to get any clearer image by spending $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 on a study. If you develop Indian Springs, State Avenue will follow. But hey, that's just my thought. So there it is for the record. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people in the future read these studies.
Commissioner Johnson, I probably need to respond. I'm not sure what kind of money to build in for plan implementation for something like that. When you're talking about a large geographic area, I agree with you, but I mean, I can put $100,000 in for something, but we could be talking about a major infrastructure change. I mean,
Sure.
I can, you know, so you can put some small amount that's kind of just, it's there as a placeholder, and that's probably all I can really come up with, because without understanding the magnitude of where we're going to put a first priority to it, and a lot of times the plan come in coordination with some type of new development or change, and maybe it's some, we're going to buy this property and put it in coordination, you know, I can go along that line, and
No,
that's probably the best I can do, because
I would agree with that. I'm satisfied with that. I just think we need to put a marker in there to show that we are continuing to be engaged with this. One of the things that we've heard from, as we've gone out and talked to different potential partners, is they say, you all need to be the one that's leading the process, as opposed to coming to us to find the money. That's a novel concept. Okay, so we've proven that we have this here. If there's something, and again, like you said, it could be a marker, and I'm not here to determine what that is. I'm going to lean to your professionalism to determine what that number should be. But this just shows that we're looking beyond just the here and now once this plan is done, to make sure that we're moving it down at least another year or two towards implementation. I'll trust your judgment on that.
Commissioner Townsend?
I had to weigh in on this because I wanted to say that there has not been a Northeast plan ever done before. So I want people to realize that. And secondly, I agree with Commissioner Johnson. The point is for us to look at or get professionals to help and engage the community with the help of professionals to what can be done in an orderly fashion that makes sense. I was getting inquiries about why certain things didn't sell when new properties went up, but it was kind of haphazard. The houses were nice, but if you had a new house next to 3 old ones, who was going to buy that? So my question was, what was the plan overall? I don't know what the plan is going to recommend. I will say, if I'm still here, I will advocate for there being more than a plan, but activation of some part of it. And I hope the community will be ready for that. I think you have to strike a match to light the fire, whatever that is. We may have missed an opportunity with Indian Springs. I'm not sure that it came across clearly that for years, Lane 4 had represented us, and that the plan that people heard at those meetings was not something they just hashed up. And I'm not sure that what I heard them recommend would foreclose the opportunity later to do all that we want and have all that we want. I heard Commissioner Walters quoted quite a bit that it should be a standout. I agree. Sometimes it takes a little more for people to come and see, well, hey, I see something going on there, and maybe that could happen. Didn't mean to turn this into an Indian Springs, but that's the mindset I have going forward with the Northeast Plan. We're not planning to plan, we're planning to do. And to that end, I don't know what that's going to be, so I see Administrator's point. I would rather see $100,000 put more into these streets and these weeds. We know they're there now to get rid of them. So I would say maybe we should hold off on money, but going on the record that the plan is to be activated, not just to be put on a shelf.
All right, I will give Commissioner McKiernan credit for bringing up urban planning, and thank you for that diversion.
Sorry.
And if you would continue with your list.
Not a problem at all. I bring up urban planning any chance I get. So on page 5, still on cash finance projects, just an observation I made is that in the second section, which is fire, the Kansas Avenue Maintenance Facility actually shows up in several sections. It shows up here, it shows up in building and logistics, it shows up, I think, in the sales tax fund, and each place it shows up, that amount of money pushes that one over budget. And it would seem to me that that's a really important facility for us to find a way to make at least a start on some of the improvements that we need to make. Because, for example, in this category, we were perfectly hitting our target until we added the $100,000 for that, and then we're 100 over. So anyway, just to make sure that this is an important project for us, it's an important,
We're having numbers.
right there,
That one?
that one.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well,
All right.
hers are numbered wrong.
Oh, okay. So anyway, that's all I have on that. Next one, down at the middle of that page, Parks and Recreation, annual facilities repairs and improvements. This is one last year, we had $350,000 in this line last year for improvements to the Argentine Community Center. And last year I said I fully 100% support putting that money toward that community center. But what I said last year was I want to put that same amount of money so that over consecutive years we go through systematically all of our community center and we make similar upgrades and enhancements so that we spread that across all of our community centers. And so I saw that we're back down to 100 on this and it's not actually allocated. So I would just hope that since we budgeted 350 last year, I'm hoping we can hold that line and find other places to make everything balanced, because I think systematically improving our community centers, and by the way, the work they're doing at Argentine is great work and would be, well done at all of our community centers. So I'm not going to hold up anything. I'm just on the record as saying I'd love to see that happen.
Second.
In the next section, Public Works. And Debbie, I guess this is a question for you. Second line says neighborhood street resurfacing. We originally budgeted 750, and then in the amended budget, it's 750 in red, which would suggest a change, but it's the same number.
I'm not sure if we modified that at some point, but I think we changed it back.
Okay.
It probably, that
Thank
should
you,
not
that's
be
all I
red.
need. 2 lines down from that, it says neighborhood street lighting program, budgeted 100 a year. I'm just curious, what does that entail? Is that like replacement of broken heads or knock down power poles?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay.
That's the purchase of, or the procurement of parts and pieces to
Okay.
keep everything working.
Perfect. The final one under Public Works is Sidewalk Gap Program. It's listed as new, doesn't start until 18, but is that the same program that you brought to Neighborhood and Community Development 2 meetings ago?
Yes, that was our initial summarization of it. We're still evaluating potential growth
Okay.
in that program, as I indicated in the last meeting, but.
So I'll just say that Commissioners Murguia and myself and Townsend all said at that meeting, we're not going to make it anywhere if we budget that kind of money toward sidewalk gap program. So I would hope that we can find a way to put much larger amounts of money into this. I think we envisioned this kind of as almost a district by district, but identify the high priority gaps using the sidewalk and trails analysis that's being updated. But I think we were all in agreement, we won't make a dent unless we can really find ways to improve that, or increase that rather.
And that's correct. We just didn't want to increase it something arbitrarily just yet. That's why we're looking at it a little more closely before we put a real number in there that makes more sense.
You notice I haven't asked for any number to go down yet. Sorry.
I've made
Thankful
that
for
note.
that.
And then finally, this one's one just for Doug. On the very last page, under Special Assets Fund, Reardon Center improvements, hotel proceeds, and I notice that we don't have any budgeted for 17. Didn't we already have that money in the bank from the sale?
Well, the money that you see budgeted here is from the hotel proceeds. So this effectively, if we spend it all like that, then the money runs out that we had the proceeds going to. Now, we do have the opportunity to allocate some CID money that's in the area that could go to it. But what I was doing here was trying just to show the budget of money that when we sold the hotel and we said we're going to put this over toward the Reardon Center, now I've got a budget.
And that's not the problem. The issue was, I just thought we might be able to sneak some of that into 17 amended, but we're just going to stick with, to get a head start.
Well, I'm not sure, Debbie. We're spending money this year. We've already spent money on the facility, or was it all last year?
Yes, no, it's in the capital projects fund, so we could, if I think they've already got some of the money allocated to it that was probably allocated from 16 carrying over to 17, but if they found additional work, we could
Just in a
allocate.
different line? Because we did the roof, didn't we?
Yeah, we did the roof and the AC units, John. What? John Kelly with Buildings and Logistics.
Sorry, what was the question, Doug?
What work did we do at the Reardon Center that we already started spending money on from the hotel proceeds?
Well, we did a study on the whole facility to find out what items need to be touched first, which are a lot of the major mechanical components. A new roof has already been put on, that's been completed. And then internal staff have been down there just doing kind of some day-to-day, some maintenance that's been lacking for quite some time. So we did get a report up to administration. We'll be working on that to itemize which things to tackle.
Perfect. That's all I needed. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Well, how much did that speech by McKiernan cost us? Commissioner Markley.
I have just a couple items. Upper Holiday collapse in Morris. Is there anything that we are planning to address that? I know we haven't necessarily come up with, I don't think, a solution yet, but I'm curious. I mean, this is our 2018 budget, so if there's nothing budgeted here, that means we're going to go a year with nothing being done.
Well, we are exploring options. We don't have a solution for you yet. I would guess that once we do, that we will work with the county administrator to get those funds lined up.
Okay. And then my only other comment, maybe not a question, I'd still like to buy my library building. It's $120,000. So my only request in that regard is if staff could make contact with the library board and have that discussion. The building's available, it's $120,000. My understanding is there's funding in the library board budget that could pay for the remodel of that facility to move the Turner Community Library into that adjacent building by the community garden. So it seems like it's a cheap option to get a facility that we could use. Those are my only two. Thanks.
All right. This, tonight is not the last opportunity, but we are.
It's only May.
It's only May, but we are going, after we turn the staff loose with the feedback, then they'll spend June crafting this budget and then bringing it back to us in July. It is easier to make suggestions now than in July. And I think the dialogue tonight has been terrific, and the highlights that have been made have been terrific. So I appreciate everyone's input, because it is the priorities that you're looking for going forward.
It certainly is, and I appreciate that feedback. And I think, as I said 2 weeks ago, we built this budget. We've tried to be reasonable where we're at, though, as Commissioner McKernan pointed out, we're still above our targets in certain areas. So when I'm coming back into it and trying to balance where we get to, and I'm looking at the targets of all the equipment we have as compared to operational priorities, you know, and what we're doing in the SOAR program and trying to maintain those functional things. And I believe I heard pretty good, clear in the strategies that we're looking for a couple mil reduction. You know, we got to push this. Some things will get pushed, and that's just where it's going to be. It's not going to come back and look exactly like it is in front of you today. But that's where I needed the comments and understand whether certain things are in or out and what needs priorities, and we'll work from there.
A general comment or question or request. Last year at this time, we spent a lot of time talking about the sales tax windfall from Star Bonds, and we talked a lot about how to spend that money, ways to spend it, that we would spend it for 1 year and it would be available the next year, and other decisions we could make that tied up that money for a long period of time, such as tax reduction. I'd like to, get an accounting or resurface that discussion. Where are we? How much of the $12 million we're going to get this year has already been spoken for, and how much we will have at our disposal? And it's pertinent to CMIP when we're deciding whether we're going to spend cash or whether we're going to borrow. So at some future meeting, it would be nice to just have a review of that.
That's good. Thank you. Commissioner Townsend.
I would appreciate kind of a primer at some later time about what it might take to get CNIP back. That was already in process when I came on board.
Takes money.
How do we get it? Yeah. But the process was already laid out. And it was a great mechanism for commissioners to target in certain areas. And that's when I found out how much sidewalks and all this costs. So what would it take to get that going again?
Renew the 3/8-cent sales tax?
We'll have further conversation about that, but I think getting that I think that's information that the staff can readily pull. It's just raw numbers.
Yeah.
Commissioner Townsend, one other.
The thing about the lights, the street lights and the repair, what would it take, or what buy-in do we need from BPU to initiate what you were talking about? Or is that something we can do on our own and assist them?
Well,
how does that work?
What our discussion with the BPU was, and the structure of programs that have been presented to us from companies that would do the LED light and have worked in other cities, were that you analyze what it costs you to operate your lights today. And then let's just look at a smaller scale and say, okay, if it takes you $100 and then you install an LED light and your operational cost is $90, the companies have said, we'll go do all the capital infrastructure cost and you'll pay us whatever the savings is from that original $100. So like I said, if we ended up paying $90, they would expect $10. And they'd program that over what they anticipate to be about a 20-year time period. If they'll have the calculations done, if in the end we only could save $95 was our cost, they're the ones at risk of not getting paid back. So they're taking all the risk on the capital project, and the money would come from the savings of what we're paying today versus what we'll be paying in the future. And that was the concept that the board was not, and see how to advance that.
I think one option would be, I think we need to continue to negotiate with BPU to see how we get this done. I think that's our best option, is to continue to negotiate with BPU, because from a quality of life and a safety perspective and a cost perspective over time, it's much better to move to the LED. Yeah. And so we just need to get it done.
One of the other good components about LED is, as they've been out, it appears that the projected time frame or the repeat time frame to go in and do maintenance on them is about 25% of what it is on current. So you do also save that kind of staff time too.
We have one more item tonight. Yes, Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. Since staff is here, I just wanted to step back to the 2017 Neighborhood Street Resurfacing Program, and you had met with me last fall and given me the list of the 18-plus projects in the at-large District 1 area. Are these getting ready to start?
The 2017 program is getting ready to start, and we'll be evaluating with the new pavement management system and our overall asset management system as a whole what our projected projects will be moving forward, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bach?
All right.
Does that mean there might be changes in what you're going to address since you're using your new?
No, not in the 2017
Okay,
program. What we
thank you.
presented to you last fall will be the ones that get done this year. Moving forward, we'll have a different mechanism for how we present things.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, the last item on here is not project. It's more of an event-type activity in recognition that we're 20 years into consolidation. There has been a fair amount of discussion in the community about doing something to commemorate this event, to market it. Discussion that's been with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I think they, with their board, had discussions about potentially funding a video that would be out there that could be done. I think follow-up conversation between the CVB, the Chamber, Wyandotte, the approach back to the unified government about doing a joint marketing program to celebrate, to talk about the image of what's happened with the community since consolidation has been in place. So the request is, well, we each put in $20,000. I think they have to take it back to their individual boards to get that authority, but they're asking if we would do the same. $20,000 is something you have it's in my authority to do as county administrator. However, I look at it and typically say that what's within my authority is things that are for the operation of the government. This is a little bit special. We do have money within our transient guest tax that we budgeted for 2017 to put out there in the event there were any kind of events or activities that came about. So that's where I would take the money from. I wouldn't be taking it from operating. I'd be taking it from the transient guest tax.
And you, Mr. Bach, can you repeat that, the money piece? I'm not sure everyone heard you.
Sure. I would look to take it from our transient guest tax funding. As you're aware, that money went up with the retirement of the Star bonds. We didn't allocate it all out. We'd put it over and said, we'll just put that into account, determine what's the right kind of projects for it to be, though I did budget some of it in the 2017 in the event there were activities or events we wanted to fund through the course of the year. So this would be an eligible expense because I believe it is promoting our community and would fall in line of that. So that is out there, and wanted to see whether we thought that was a good idea or I should.
Well, can we have a parade with elephants?
I think elephants have gone out of fashion with the PETA regulations.
The Renaissance Festival got rid of them.
Well, we could use balloons. I mean, we could have a parade.
I love parades.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they were thinking about a parade with this, but I could offer that input if that's where we're pushing.
But I do think that's a variation of my concern, which was just that we make sure we're using this money in a way that's beneficial to as many, obviously, these contributors as possible, but also in as many ways as possible, because we don't want to go out there and say, look, we unified our government and saved you a whole lot of money, and then we spent $80,000 of it on a video that nobody ever watches. So we need to be, careful of how we spend it and make sure that we're spending in a way that's beneficial. And I think the CVB thought, well, if we contribute and we do a video, we can play it on the bus tours when people come to visit our community. We want something that's going to be useful for a long time and in a broad way, and not just we're going to host a $80,000 steak luncheon. I just wanted to make sure that we are thoughtful about how we spend those funds.
Well, the way it's presented to me here, it seems it's.
Can you turn your microphone on, please, sir?
It seems to me that this is presented here as an economic development tool rather than a punch and cake party kind of celebration.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good idea to promote the unified government. And if the window dressing is the 20 years, fine. I mean.
I think there's anticipation it would be an economic development tool developed, and there would be some kind of celebration that would be fitting and not
an $80,000 luncheon.
Not a luncheon, steak dinner, but yes. So, any further comments or questions about this, Commissioner Bynum?
I would just want to reiterate that there needs to be an education component. I support the expenditure. I just want to make sure there's an education component within the 20-year celebration. It's really important that folks that were not here 20 years ago working on unification understand what this community was like prior and what it's like now. And I think that is a critical piece of celebrating the unification. So that's
Thank
all
you.
I wanted. Thanks.
You want
Commissioner
to roll out
McKiernan.
old timers?
Yeah, I'm an old timer.
Commissioner McKiernan?
And I totally agree with that. I think it should be an economic development, a promotion tool. And as we originally discussed at CVB, there might be one, and we discussed a video, but this could take many actual formats, but one overall effectively marketing or economic development piece. But then each of the contributing entities, we would weave in pieces that they could break off and use individually or separately for economic development, business attraction, business growth, business retention. And so it would be essentially geared toward, look what we did in 20 years, and we want you to be part of our next 20, and it's a lot of promotion and economic development and business expansion. I support it.
I hope I got that.
All right. That concludes our meeting tonight. I will close, I think fitting, when we're talking about a 20-year consolidation celebration, we should acknowledge tonight we lost this week one of the champions of consolidation and civic leader Gary Grable. And so I just think we can acknowledge his life and legacy in our community. They have not announced services yet, but I know we will promote that when it is out. But if we're going to talk about 20 years of consolidation, without civic leaders like Gary Grable, it wouldn't have happened. All right.
That's correct. Thank you, Mayor, for bringing that up. I appreciate that.
You bet. All right, we are adjourned.
For watching. Please visit our website at www.wycokck.org for a complete listing of our schedule for public meetings.